Before we start, and I forgot to remind you guys about this in the previous video, but have a notebook and pen handy. It would be better if you can visualize also what I'm talking about. Hi everyone, this is Charm again from Ready2Adult Philippines, a channel about personal finance, entrepreneurship, and adulting how-tos. It's tax season, and that's why in the last video, we talked about the basics of taxes in the Philippines. And in this video, as promised, we're going to be talking about the income tax in the Philippines, specifically for professionals and sole proprietors. So we're going to be talking more about what the income tax is, who needs to file them, who and what are tax exempt, and of course, how to compute them and file for them. So if you guys are interested, then keep on watching. So what is an income tax return? An ITR is basically a form that taxpayers file to the BIR to report their income, expenses, and other important information such as tax liability and tax refund. So I mentioned withholding taxes in my previous video, and that basically reduces how much you pay for your income tax. So it's basically a gift certificate that your clients give you to pay for income tax. So the deadline for the annual filing for the income tax return is on April 15th of every year. But I reminded you guys on the previous video that you have to file quarterly income tax returns as well. And that's the 15th day of May, August, and November. So don't forget that. So if you file your ITR late, you might incur a 25% surcharge from the taxes and that 12% interest per year until you pay it off. So it's much better to file your ITR early so that you avoid any penalties as well as have enough time in case you have to refile it if you have miscalculations. Okay, so who needs to file the income tax return? So there's a full list up on the BIR website. I'll link that below for you guys. So basically, if you're a Filipino citizen living in the Philippines and you are earning from either a local employer or international clients, then you have to file for income tax return. Or if you are receiving income from the Philippines, whether you are a Filipino citizen or a foreigner, whether you're living in the Philippines or not, if you are receiving income from the Philippines, then you need to file the income tax return. Okay, so if you're a regular employee and you only have one employer, you might have noticed that they give you a form 2316. That means that you don't have to file for an ITR anymore. The taxes are deducted from your salaries and the HR does the filing for you. This already substitutes as the income tax return or the income tax filing. So who needs to file the ITR on their own? We're going to be focusing more on the individual taxpayers again. So those are first, the purely compensation earners. How it's different from the regular income earners we were talking about earlier is that you have at least two or more employers. You file under the BIR form 1700. So next are the business income earners or the self-employed, usually registered as a sole proprietor or a professional. And those need to file the 1701 if they are under the graduated income tax table itemized deduction, and the 1701A if they are under the 8% income tax rate or graduated tax table but optional standard deduction. If you don't know what those are the ways that you can file your ITR depending on which category you fall on. So make sure you check my previous video to know what those are. And lastly are the mixed income earners, which means that you are earning from a compensation or employment as well as a business. Maybe you are fully employed but you're also a freelancer. Or maybe you're a licensed professional practicing but you also have another business. So you would file under the 1701 BIR form. Okay, so who are exempted from filing income taxes? I'll also link to the full list below, but I want to emphasize that minimum wage earners does not need to file income taxes. Again, if you are under one employer, you don't need to file income taxes anymore. Your employer does that for you. And also, I want to emphasize that overseas Filipino workers that live abroad and purely earns from their employer abroad, they don't need to file taxes. So this is very different from freelancers that are based in the Philippines and working in the Philippines but are receiving compensation from international clients. So an example for that are YouTubers who are earning AdSense from Google who is based in LA. They are not registered in the BIR, but we do have to file taxes and we do declare our AdSense revenue. Okay, now I'm gonna give you guys sample computations. But before that, I wanna quickly talk about the terminologies. I noticed that a few of you got confused with the terminologies I used in the previous video. So first term is gross sales or gross income. This is basically all your sales recorded, especially in your OR booklet or your sales invoice. Add that all up and that makes up your gross sales. That's usually what you use if you compute for your sales tax, if you compute for your 8% annual return, so gross sales or gross income. Second are your deductibles, and we mentioned this in the graduated income tax table. So for the deductibles, those are your expenses of your business, and also the 250,000 is also a deductible. So those are your deductibles. And then next is the taxable income. So the taxable income is after deductions, and it's what you use to multiply to 8% if you're in the 8% flat rate, or that's the number you use when you refer to the graduated tax table. So the amount you get from that after you multiply it by 8% or you refer to the graduated tax table is your tax payable. That's what you pay to the BIR. I saw some confusions in the previous video where the 250,000, is that my total income? That's actually after deduction. Okay, so before we jump into the computations I'll give about the income taxes, I compared in my previous video which is better, OSD or optional standard deduction or itemized deduction. But in this video, I want to compare graduated tax table and 8% flat rate. So I know you guys were asking me, so for example, you have low business expenses. So it still depends really if you have low or high, similar to my previous point. But if you have low business expenses, let's say you earn 500,000 and you only have 10,000 of business expense. If you go for the 8% tax rate, that's 500,000 minus 250,000. So you have the 250,000 that's taxable. You multiply that by 8%, you get 20,000 pesos. Now let's go over to the graduated tax table. If you're in the graduated tax table and it's itemized deduction, 500,000 minus your 10,000 of expenses, that's 490,000 pesos. Based on the graduated tax table, you will be taxed on income tax of 50,000 pesos, but you also have a percentage tax. So the percentage tax for the 500,000, that's times 3% or 15,000 pesos. So you will be paying a total of 65,000 pesos in taxes compared to the 20,000 pesos. So if you have lower expenses, I guess that the 8% would be a better route for you. But if you have high business expenses, like again, for example, if you're an online seller who have high overhead costs, let's say you have a total income or sales of 1 million pesos and you have 700,000 pesos of expenses. If we go to the 8% flat rate, that's 1 million pesos minus 250,000 pesos. So the taxable income is 750,000 pesos. Multiply that by 8%, that's 60,000 pesos. Okay, now what if we go to the graduated tax table itemized deduction? 1 million pesos minus 700,000 pesos, you have a taxable income of 300,000 pesos. And if we base that on the graduated income tax table, 50,000 times 20%, that's 10,000 pesos. And we have a percentage tax of 3% for the entire 1 million, which is 30,000 pesos. So you will be paying a total of 40,000 pesos in taxes as compared to the 60,000 pesos. So again, if you have high overhead costs or high business expense, then it's better if you go the graduated income tax rate. So again, these are just rule of thumbs. They're not definite. So it's really better if you assess for yourselves and check out and be mindful of your income and your expenses for your business or profession. Okay, now I have a few scenarios for you guys and I want to switch it over to being the whole screen. So if you guys want to screenshot it, you can just screenshot the scenarios that I'm gonna give. If you want to skip the whole part where I'll explain the computations, then skip to this point where we talk about how to file and the ways to file your income tax return. So scenario number 1, an individual opted for 8% tax. For the year, the individual earned 240,000 pesos and no other source of income. So the tax liabilities are as follows. The income tax minus 250,000 is negative 10,000 pesos. So since you earned below 250,000 pesos, there are no tax dues, but you still have to file for your taxes. Take note of that. And your business tax, since again, you're 8%, you don't have to file for business taxes anymore. Scenario number 2, another individual earned for the whole year 500,000 pesos, and there's also no other source of income. So the tax liabilities are 500,000 minus 250,000 pesos. So the 250,000 pesos remaining is the taxable income. You multiply that by 8% and you get 20,000 pesos. Again, no business tax, so it's only 20,000 pesos. So scenario number 3, an individual opted for the graduated tax table, and he or she earns 2.5 million pesos gross income for the year, no other sources of income, and the cost of sales and allowable operating expenses incurred by the individual amounted to 1.7 million pesos. So we compute it as follows. The gross sales is 2.5 less the cost of sales and operating expenses of 1.7 million pesos. So the taxable income is 800,000 pesos. We base that on the graduated tax table. The tax due or the tax payable is 130,000 pesos. So there is a business tax of 3% percentage tax. So 2.5 million pesos times 3% is 75,000. So the total to be paid is 205,000 pesos. So let's take the same scenario and they opted for the 8% tax table. So the 2.5 million pesos of gross sales minus 250,000 pesos. So that is 2,250,000 pesos times 0.08 or 8%, then you will be paying 180,000 pesos of taxes. Again, no business taxes. So in this scenario, it would be better if they filed under 8%. Okay, so I hope that was a clear comparison. Let's take another scenario. Mixed income earner who files under 8% flat rate. So the individual has a gross sales or receipts through online selling of 240,000 pesos for the year. He incurred costs and expenses of 100,000. He received a compensation income of 300,000 pesos in the past year. So again, we're on a mixed income earner example here. He opted to be taxed at 8%. So the tax liabilities are as follows. So the compensation, which is 300,000 pesos, we take the 50,000 from there because the 250,000 pesos is non-taxable. 50,000 times 20%, it's 10,000 pesos. The business income, which is 240,000 pesos times 8, is 19,200. So notice I did not deduct the 250,000 again in the business income because we already deducted that in the income tax. So 8% of the 240,000 is 19,200. So the total tax dues is 29,200. Again, no business tax because it's 8% flat rate. So what if this mixed income earner filed under the graduated tax table? Again, with the same figures, we have the compensation income at 300,000, business income 240,000, and the expenses at 100,000. So we have the taxable income of 440,000 pesos. And if we look at the graduated tax table for that, that is 38,000 pesos. Okay, so 440,000 minus 250,000 is 190,000 pesos times 20%, that's 38,000. We have business taxes as well for the 240,000. The compensation doesn't need business tax anymore. So 240,000 pesos times 3%, that's 7,200. Okay, I hope you guys are with me. I know I'm spewing out a lot of numbers here. Last scenario for mixed income earners who are still under the graduated tax table. You have a gross sales or receipts through your online platform. Let's say you're a content creator and it's 2.5 million pesos. And you have a compensation income as well. So you're working of 300,000 pesos. The cost of sales and allowable operating expenses incurred by the individual is 1.7 million. So let's determine the tax due. The compensation income, 300,000, and the business income, 2.5 million minus 1.7 million of expenses. That's a total taxable income of 1.1 million. We base it on the graduated tax table. So 1.1 million pesos, 800,000 pesos of that goes directly to 130,000 plus 30% of the excess, which is 300,000. They have a total tax drew of 220,000 pesos. Okay, so again, they were earning 2.8 million pesos gross in total, diba? So, 220,000 yung taxable income nila. So, business taxes, 2.5 million times 3%. So, that is 75,000 pesos on top of the 220,000 pesos. So, that's a total of 295,000 pesos. Okay, so I hope the examples were clear. So now let's talk about filing. For income taxes in particular, you have to file quarterly and annually, but I mentioned in my previous video that especially if you're VATable, you are filing monthly. So let's talk about the different methods of filing. So there's the EFPS or the Electronic Filing and Payment System. So this is available to the top 10,000, if I'm not mistaken, 10,000 companies in the Philippines. So mostly corporations, maybe partnerships also use this. So the EFPS system is only available to those. So another way for us individual taxpayers is the manual filing. Basically, this is where you get forms from the BIR, you fill it up manually, you attach the forms manually, and then you submit it to the RDO or your branch. So a lot of us don't like that way anymore, especially during the lockdown. So let's talk about the third option, which is the eBIR forms. So the eBIR forms is basically a tax preparation software. So you download a software from the BIR website and you input your details there. You can choose which tax form you want to fill up and everything. So I want to focus on the eBIR forms, but I also want to add Taxumo. So Taxumo is very similar, you know, you do it online, you pay online, you can do it from the comforts of your own home. And I reached out to Taxumo, as I mentioned in my previous video, and I want to compare the eBIR forms and Taxumo. So this part of the video is actually not sponsored by Taxumo, but I will be talking about more of them later on as they are the sponsor of this video. So this is my own opinion and comparison between eBIR forms and Taxumo. So for the eBIR forms, the biggest pro for me is it's free. So for Taxumo, it is a subscription-based application. These are their rates, but basically if you subscribe for 2 years, it ranges from $399 a month to $799 a month, depending if you're 8%, if you're non-VAT, if you're VAT, etc. So with the eBIR form, since it's an offline software, you do have to keep on downloading and updating your software because BIR posts upgrade, which is actually good that they upgrade their software once in a while, but you have to keep mind to download the latest software for your form submissions to be valid. For the eBIR forms, it is digital, but you have to fill it up manually. Like, there are some details that you have to fill up manually, like the income and expenses. They do compute it automatically, but you have to input the numbers manually. So for Taxumo, I really feel like it's a smarter and simpler way of filing your tax forms because it's all auto-generated tax forms and automatic computations of your taxes as well. So there's like a cash flow tab wherein you put your income and expenses all throughout the year, and then when it comes to filing quarterly or annually, then it automatically does that for you. So with the eBIR forms, I heard that it's not available on Mac computers yet. So if you have a Mac computer or laptop, then you might want to reconsider doing this. You might have to do it manually or consider Taxumo. So for Taxumo, since it is a web-based application, you can take it anywhere, any browser, you can do it on your phone, and etc. So it's really very easily accessible. Now, for both of them, they do have multiple payment channels, but I would say I think Taxumo has more options because with the eBIR forms, it's usually the government, partner banks, or PesoNet, and GCash and PayMaya. A similarity I see in Taxumo is that they accept online banking and also GCash, but Taxumo has other modes of payment like credit card, debit card, GrabPay, and over-the-counter and Bayad centers as well. And lastly, I'm going to compare the submission for the EAFPS or the Electronic Annual Financial Statements that's attached to your income tax return. So for this, Taxumo actually does this everything in the back end. They do it for you. But for the eBIR forms, you have to download a separate software and do a very similar process. And yeah, so it really depends on you which one you'll go for, because I feel like there are really pros and cons for both. I acknowledge that, of course, eBIR form being free is a really big pro. But for me, because I do really appreciate the time that I get to spend on other things as compared to doing all of these things kind of like digitally but manually, I really appreciate a platform like Taxumo. So again, it's really up to you to decide, but I'm just showing you the different ways to file it. So again, I want to thank Taxumo for sponsoring this video. Taxumo is a web-based application, and it's the easiest way for small business owners, self-employed professionals, and freelancers in the Philippines to prepare, file, and pay for their taxes. I think the service they provide is really great. And again, I was the one who reached out to Taxumo to sponsor this video. And you can check out the platform completely for free. You can sign up with this link, and I will link it down below in the description. But if you do decide to subscribe to Taxumo, I also got you guys a 10% off. So it's very sulit if you do this and register annually or for 2 years because of the 10%. So here are some sample computations of the 10% discount if you use the code Ready2Adult Ph. Again, you can sign up for free with the link below. And if you decide to continue and subscribe and get their services, then you can check out with the discount code so that you guys save on 10%. So I do acknowledge that a bookkeeper or accountant or a CPA can help you even further, especially if you're operating on a much bigger scale already. So it's really up to you guys. I'm not saying that Taxumo can replace bookkeepers. I'm just saying if you are filing your taxes by yourself, it's really better if you use a platform like this so you don't get it wrong and you don't incur penalties. And again, if you like this video, then don't forget to leave me a thumbs up. If you appreciate videos like this, then make sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you get updated every time I upload new videos. And again, I know that taxes can be hard and adulting's already hard enough. That's why I love making these videos for you guys. And again, I'm Charm from Ready2Adult Philippines, and I will see you in my next video.